So on your lens, and I took a lens off of the camera, and by the way, whenever you're working with the lens, you never want to touch the lens itself because it gets schmutz on it, and then you're gonna have to clean it off, and you need a special cleaning tissue to do that. You generally don't want to use a rough cloth or something because you might actually scratch the glass. But on the lens, there is something called the aperture dial, and if you haven't already done so, on your sheet, you want to write down these numbers. But the question is, what number goes where? So there's 22 all the way down to 1.7. And currently I have my aperture, aperture is another word for opening, set to 22. So I'm going to rotate the lens so you can see what an aperture of 22 looks like. And you can see there's a tiny little hole in there. And I'm going to change this and bring it slowly down to a smaller number. So I'm going to go from 22 to 1.7. Now watch, as I turn the dial, you can see the aperture is actually getting larger. And interestingly enough, the number 1.7 is significantly larger of an opening, an aperture, than 22. So it turns out that the larger the number, the smaller the aperture. And I know this is confusing, but the smaller the number, the larger the aperture. So on your sheet, if you're like, well, what goes with what size? This is 22, 16, 11, 8, 5.6, 4, all the way down to 1.7. All right. And that is how that works on every single camera. So this has happened to all of us, right? You're in a dark room, and if you stay there long enough, eventually the dark room, while it's still very dark, you start to be able to see better. And you're probably already aware that what's basically happening is that your eyesight is adjusting and your pupils are dilating. So they're actually getting larger. So the aperture is opening up. So then, right, if someone turns the light on or suddenly everything gets bright, right? All of a sudden, your eyesight, you have to kind of squint for a while, and then eventually, as you can see, your pupils will start to get smaller. So just like the aperture on the lens, our eyes have an aperture as well. The only difference is that our eyesight adjusts automatically. With a camera, you need to tell the camera, hey, we're in a dark room, please open up, or we're in a bright area, so close up and let in less light.